And John Barry?
Yes, I mean, like everyone up here, I think youth unemployment is a major issue. I mean, across the UK, the figure's about 22%. We're now back to levels that we had in the 1980s, and the danger is that all the investment that we have made in you, in your skills and education, could potentially be gone if people are leaving. And many people are going to Australia, Canada, and so on, which is a terrible loss in terms of families, but also the, as I say, the economic investment in your skills. I mean, what I think we need to do is look at where are the growth areas in the economy now and in the future. And certainly it seems to me that the older model that we had, which has so spectacularly crashed now, which you can describe briefly as buildings, banks and boutiques. Buildings being property. The construction sector, it's on its knees. Yes, there's a lot of skills there we need to start revitalising. Banks is the financial sector, and I think there's been an over-reliance on a service-based model for the economy, whether it's in the UK as a whole, Ireland, or the regional economy here in Northern Ireland. I think the big picture is we're going to start thinking about making things again in terms of apprenticeships, and I know Stephen's department is interested in bringing back apprenticeships. We've had perhaps too much of an emphasis in Northern Ireland on everybody having to go to university to get a degree in terms of having, the service, a service sector which now no longer is going to be sustainable in terms of jobs being there. And I do think we do need to start looking at ways in which we can start identifying where are the growth sectors. Well, the creative industries, whether it's gaming, whether it's the media, there's something we're involved in here. Certainly from my own point of view as a member of the Green Party, the green economy, it's inevitable we're going to have to start moving to a low carbon economy. Some of you may have been aware of the noise from Belfast Lough with the piling that's going on there. That's to widen the lock to enable large ships to come in to start looking at the renewable energy industry in terms of wind turbines. But we need to have the fitters, the plumbers, the project managers and so on that's needed for that economy. So certainly things like the Green New Deal, the creative industries, and other ways in which we can start seeing that the skills you have should be ideally maintained here as opposed to people having to leave the country. So I think it's a major issue. Just to let you know, there is a bit of good news in North Down. North Down's figure is about 6.7% in the 16 to 24-year-old in terms of youth unemployment. Still not good, but certainly is a lot better than the 18% Stephen mentioned, or indeed 22% across the UK. But it's about starting to think innovatively. That I think the crash we had in 2008 is a wake-up call that the economy needs to be rethought in terms of our economic strategy. And just to finish, and just to reiterate, we're going to start making things again, I think, not just in Northern Ireland or the UK, but Europe as a whole. And that is going to take a major structural transformation, of which we need leadership at the executive level around this.
Okay. Leslie Gray?
Yeah, well, this is arguably one of the most important things, that's confronting all of us at the moment. We have our new programme for government, which has placed the economy at the forefront, which the last one also did, and which, again, I fully support. We're expecting to create 25,000 new jobs, but we know there's a demand for something like 114,000. So there's a major uphill struggle. I do agree about the creation of manufacturing. There was a move, it's probably 7 or 8 years ago, that manufacturing was old hat. Our labour costs were too high, and a lot of the manufacturing did move, in fact, to economies where, in fact, the labour was cheap. And we have a situation where the BRIC countries have developed quite alarmingly, really. The only comfort in that, and mind you, it's a two-edged thing, is that we now know that the economy in China is slowing down. We also know that they're taking shortcuts on quality, which is the very same loop, in fact, that Japan went through, sort of maybe 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And therefore people begin to wonder, is it wise to invest there? Should we not be investing where quality counts and where the demand will go towards the quality is? On the downside of that, one of our major employers here in North Down told me the other day that he, in fact, has had to buy product from China because no one else in the UK was able to manufacture it. He's in the plastics industry. So there's a lot to be done, but I believe that it needs a cocktail, a lot of things to correct it. We need more foreign direct investment, and hopefully we're going to get that. We have to look to our assets. We have a very well-educated workforce. We have much cheaper university studies now, which is going to be a plus. And therefore we have a lot of the raw materials, basic economic materials. What we need to do is to get the opportunity to go and do those, for example, with FDI coming in and what have you. Stephen mentioned the sort of temporary jobs or job work experience. And you know, again, I support it. It's very hard to get a job if you have no experience. These schemes are designed to give you some experience. The trouble is, it also can be very disappointing for people who have worked, say, for 3 months and then are just let go again. You know, it can be very disappointing in that way. So we've got to have real jobs. We've got to have them fairly soon. But it means that you have to be flexible in what you're studying. Make sure, in fact, that there's demand. One of my pet subjects, and I probably say it every time I'm here. Universities still produce people in large numbers, and with all due respect to Peter, for example, barristers are churning them out irrespective of demand. I think a lot of them must eat grass because there's certainly no work for them. So the university must gear to what, in fact, industry or business needs. And people should think themselves about entrepreneurship as a future career. Maybe leave it at that.
Okay. And Peter Weir?
Yeah, no, thank you. I largely agree with most of the things. I'll maybe take a slight degree of exception at the very last remark on the basis that in terms of the law side of it, the filter actually is at the institute stage, so there's only about 20 barristers come through each year, so that actually, the demand stage is actually hit at that point. I mean, but it is actually about being a cocktail of measures. It is about particularly, first of all, ensuring that there's the investment in our education sector and indeed investment particularly in young people. And so as mention has been made on that, for example, we've ensured that from the point of view of tuition fees that they've been kept at a level which is lower than most other parts of the United Kingdom. And that means that in terms of our homegrown talent, we can actually have a degree of investment, because one of the major problems that I saw whenever, and I'm sure it probably applies to a lot of my colleagues here, that whenever I was getting to the stage at 18 of seeing a lot of my classmates simply scattering to other parts of either the UK or other parts of the world. So it's important we retain people is the first thing. It is important that we have the investment in the skills mix, and I have to say a lot of the good work that's being done through Dell in terms of both the skills, both by Stephen and, just so he doesn't get too conceited, also by his predecessors. And there has been a reasonable amount of work done, I think, to be fair, in apprenticeships going back a number of years. One of the very major problems, and it's a really serious issue, one of the major problems of the recession, and where it particularly hits the young, is not only does it lead to job losses, but what it does mean in a lot of firms, and indeed within the public sector as well, the solution to at least try to prevent as many job losses is to have things like recruitment freezes and it's very understandable that be it either firms or public bodies try and protect existing workers. And I think in many ways that's right, but what it does mean is that there's fewer opportunities. I think it's important that we look, for example, in terms of aiding people both to work and also giving them opportunities. And I know, for example, I've had one guy from Bangor who's got a master's degree, has been doing a bit of intern work with me. I think he's going to formally go on to a process where he gets effectively job seekers plus to go on and do some work and gain that experience, help with his CV. But I think also crucially, it's also about attracting in new jobs. It is about identifying, whether it's the green economy, whether it's the agri-foods business, which is probably one of the biggest growth areas within that, whether it's tourism, which there's a strong commitment to in the programme for government, areas where the economy is developing, we've actually got to invest in that and support that. It is about, and indeed if you look at what, for instance, DEDI is doing, it's about ensuring that existing businesses do get help, that if the banks are failing them, there's a loan scheme that has now been created by InvestNI, which can help expand businesses. There is also targets in terms of foreign direct investment, and that is crucial in terms of bringing in new jobs. Now, most of us would be of the view that, for example, a lower corporation tax would be something that would be helpful to that. I know John would diverge on that bit of it, but we actually already have been reasonably successful. I think recently the figures are, Northern Ireland accounts for about 2.5% of the population of the UK, but I think the rate that we've actually been accounting in the last couple of years for about 7% of UK foreign direct investment. So there has been a level of success. The big problem at times is a lot of the stuff that the executive is doing, from all parties, we're running fast to try and keep still in that regard because of the wider global economic circumstances. But it's not about one single measure which aids things. It's about a cocktail of measures, and I think that's, I don't think there's any particular divergence on that.
Okay, thank you, Peter.